In this video, we're going to look at entry-level speaking and listening.
So, what are the key features of the speaking and listening assessment at entry level?
I think what's important to say is this component is completely new. So in the English for Office Skills qualification, which we offered before this, there wasn't a live speaking and listening component. It's a component which is externally set by City and Guilds, but internally marked. So that means that teachers will be assessing and marking their learners' performance. The assessment at entry level has three components. So there's a discrete listening component, there's a speaking and listening activity, and then there's a reflective piece at the end.
Okay, so where can I find the syllabus for this?
The syllabus is contained within the qualification handbook. There should be a copy of the handbook in every school, and some teachers who may have attended events in March and April will probably have taken one away with them.
Okay, now what's in the syllabus?
The syllabus for entry-level speaking and listening is contained within 3 units in the handbook. So looking in the handbook, you'll find 3 units. Each has a set of outcomes and assessment criteria, and that is the syllabus. So that's what needs to be taught, that's what needs to be covered, and that's what will be assessed during the assessment process.
Okay, so what do I need to teach?
What you need to teach, again going back to the handbook, is exactly what's listed there. Now the handbook will also contain some additional information which will help to explain some of those criteria. So you need to make sure you've taught those, and you need to make sure that your candidates are well prepared for the assessment.
Okay, that's great.
So I know you've been involved, Lorraine, in some of the work around this qualification. So shall we have a look at a speaking and listening paper?
So as you can see, the front cover, the candidate needs to complete their first name, middle name, surname, the enrolment number, date of birth, and they need to sign it and also put some dates on there. There's a little bit of general information, so the number of activities, maximum marks, and maximum number of marks for the test as a whole. On opening the paper, the candidate will find their instructions. So what they have to do. So have they filled in the front sheet? And they're going to complete the 2 activities in the test, and they need a blue or a black pen. No pencil, please. Activity 1 is the discrete listening task with a recording. And then they simply answer the questions. As you can see from the layout, it's quite clear what they have to do. There's an instruction, there's the question, there's the number of marks per question, and that's activity 1, a maximum of 5 marks. We then move on to activity 2. Now for activity 2, there's 15 marks available here. And what you have on the paper, it tells them that in a group they're going to discuss ideas to save energy and home in this context. The expectation is the discussion should last at least 5 minutes, and a group of people is ideally 3 people with a maximum of 5. They're then told what they will be tested on. So taking part in the discussion, listening and replying to others, asking questions, using suitable language, and allowing others to give their points of view. I think it's important that I clarify here that this is Jamaican Standard English and it's not Creole that we're expecting them to use.
Can I just confirm, Lorraine? I'm pointing to the handbook here because although we've got some pointers there to explain what will be assessed, obviously in the teaching and learning process tutors need to refer to the handbook and to the units and the unit content to make sure they cover everything, and so that learners are fully prepared.
Yep. Now once they've finished the discussion, they'd be expected to answer some questions. So have they actually understood? Did they get the gist of the discussion? And to basically make sure that they've understood. So that's the candidate's paper. And I just want to talk about the marking guide, because you will also have a copy of this. All the guidelines are given in there. It also tells you, so you've got the information about City and Guilds, the group, equal opportunities, copyright, and the publication. You've then got some guidance notes. There's a summary assessment record, and it tells you how the mark scheme works. So, for example, if the candidate demonstrates the criteria consistently, they get full marks. There's something we call a drop down, and that's where if they do it most of the time, so they're demonstrating consistency with occasional lapses, and then some of the time it's minimal competency at the level, and then 0 marks, they've not met the required standard. You also have the transcript for the listening, so should anything drastic happen and you haven't got the actual recording, you do have a transcript.
And who would read that?
Somebody who isn't their tutor, somebody whose voice isn't one that they're used to.
So not the teacher, not
No.
the teacher that's been delivering the learning to the learners. It would
No.
have to be a different person.
Yes.
Okay.
And then we go into the mark scheme, and for the first activity, the discrete listening, you've got 5 marks, and then the marks for the discussion.
And these criteria here refer back to the handbook?
Yes, so
and
as
to
you
the
can
syllabus.
see, they're reference to the City and Guilds assessment criteria.
So they take you back to the units in
Yes.
the qualification handbook.
Yes. Now, this is an example of what we call the drop down. So they would get 2 marks if they spoke clearly and appropriately for the situation. That means most or all of the time, and then 1 mark if they spoke clearly and appropriately some of the time. So this is completed by the assessor, and it's carried over, and then you have a box for the assessor comments. This is where you write down evidence of how the candidate met the criteria, so examples of what they said or what body language was used.
Is this the part where we have to be careful how we record the evidence? So we're after
Yes.
really the statements that show how the criteria were met, not what the candidate.
Yes, please, we don't want an
Specifically.
observation record. That's not the idea. It's an assessment record, so it's how the criteria was met.
So not describing what you saw, but describing how the candidate demonstrated they met
Yes.
the criteria.
Yeah.
Okay.
On to the final page, and this is where the assessor writes their name, the assessor signature, and the date that the paper was marked. It's also clear as to the number of marks for each level, whether it's a pass, a merit or a distinction. On this sheet, also the internal quality assurer, the IV, will put their name and initials if they are sampled, if this paper is sampled, and the same for the external quality assurer, so the EV.
So that means that during the quality assurance process then, the internal verifier will decide to look at some papers to monitor the consistency of the marking?
They will have a plan
Right.
as to the number of papers and the number of papers per assessor that they will be sampling.
And then the external quality assurer is checking that the internal verifier has followed the correct procedures and used their plan.
That's right, it's a very robust quality assurance system.
So just to recap, speaking listening is a new component, very important. So people have to look carefully at the handbook, at the units that are being assessed and the content within the units. At entry level, there will be a discrete listening activity. There will actually be 2 fixed dates when that discrete listening can take place. But the remainder of the assessment, so the group discussion and the reflective component, can be done whenever the learner is ready. What's really important to remember is this is an internally assessed component. So that means that teachers are assessing their candidates and they're also marking the candidate's performance internally.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Thank you, Hilary.